Hi.
I didn't think you were going to be on this one.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm ready to go.
Cool. So you're sharing the slides?
Yeah,
Yay!
I'm ready. I got you.
I'm going to use the restroom before it starts.
Okay.
Is it now? Yeah, I'm going to use it.
It's
Ugh.
raining so hard near me. Is it near you?
Not anymore. It's raining, but the hard rain seems to have passed. We had thunder. We
Oh,
definitely,
yeah, I haven't heard thunder.
yeah, we had thunder, but the rain is just petering out or gentle at this point. All right. Okay. Oh, God, the rose-breasted grosbeak has spent so much time at our feeder.
Really?
Yes, I'm so excited. You'd think I would get bored of it after 100 visits, but I'm not. I'm so excited.
That's
Every,
amazing.
yeah, I don't know when it'll move
Having
on.
one out your window is a really good idea.
Yeah, I can see two of them actually. And one of them is the one where the woodpeckers keep going to. And it's a baby and a parent. And the baby stands on the tree, and the parent goes and gets some suet from the wood or from the feeder and then takes it back and feeds it to the baby woodpecker, which is
Oh,
like a dream come
so
true.
cute. Yeah, my dad got really into birds during COVID. I know I'm gonna get there someday. I'm just not there yet.
Yeah. I've always loved them. My mother had bird books and would, had feeders out and we would watch the birds and she would tell me what they were. And when we went for like walks in the woods or something, she'd tell me. But so I've always loved them. But getting a feeder that I could see, and
Yeah,
or a smart feeder that sends me pictures is just so engaging.
I didn't know those existed. That's so cool.
Yes, it is amazing. It sends me pictures and video and it identifies the birds. It's
Oh my
tremendous.
gosh.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
So it will like notify you on your phone when a certain bird is there.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I'll text you an example. Now, right now, and we have three of them. We have one that's a bird feeder, one that's a bird bath, and one that's a hummingbird feeder. It is so wet right now, though, that the bird seed and the water just keep sticking to the camera, so the pictures aren't great. Uh,
Yeah.
but I love it so much. All right, collection.
That like really makes me want to get one
It's so spectacular.
because I think I would be able to learn more quickly with like that automatic identification.
Yes. Sometimes it still gets things wrong. Um, I'll send you this one. No, no, that's not the way to do it. This is the way to do it. You can see it's splashed with water, so it's a little harder to see, but that's the grosbeak that I just sent you. I love it. We have
Oh my gosh.
I know. The first
Bird
time
buddy.
the first time we got a woodpecker, I almost wet my pants. I mean, I still think of woodpeckers being these like incredibly exotic things. And so the fact that we have frolicking woodpeckers outside and that they come to our feeder regularly is just beyond me.
That's so amazing. Oh my gosh, look at this. Wow, that's so cool. Shit. I'll be right back. I need to take my Ritalin.
Yep.
Forgot that it was right here. I need to have like multiple bottles all over the place.
I do. In fact, I have them everywhere. I have them in every bag. I have them on my desk, on my,
That's so smart.
I have them everywhere. And when I get somewhere and I don't have one, I'm like, how the fuck did that happen? I have so many bottles. I get more than I need every month. She has me prescribed 3 doses a month, which means I have a little bit of a backstock, which is
Oh,
critical.
that's so nice.
Yeah.
Mine like won't do that for me. I don't know why. I feel like
Well,
she doesn't trust me.
I'll tell you what I told her was that I was working really long hours and my Ritalin was wearing off before I was done. It was around the time of the conference because I was working,
Hmm.
starting the day at 7 and finishing it at like 7. And
Hmm.
so she was like, well, I'm gonna up your dose to 3 times a day. So, and of course, I forget to refill it sometimes until it's like 6 weeks later. So
Hmm.
it helps me make sure that I don't run out of Ritalin.
Yeah, I should maybe just do that.
Now it's starting to rain harder.
Yeah, it was crazy here at one point.
There's a possibility I will lose power and internet. Hopefully not. It's usually when it's windy that that happens, and it doesn't seem to be too windy, but we'll see.
Okay, we'll see. Well, in that case, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So I'll keep them entertained for a second and then say, but party's over.
Yeah, you can see if I can get back in at that point. There's no attendees waiting, so I've never had one where nobody showed up.
This one will be really good. I'm sure a lot of folks will come.
People seem less interested in volunteers than they do in other topics. Despite the fact that then they always ask, like, well, how do you get volunteers? Well, why don't you come to the,
Hmm.
oh,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, look at this woodpecker.
I
Wow.
love it so much. Yeah, at our old house, it was dominated by house sparrows, which was
Hmm.
annoying. When we still had woodpeckers and we had other things, but there were so many house sparrows and they would just clean out the feeder. And we barely have any here, knock wood. It's interesting because the bird bath, the only bird that has found it, because it's in the back of the house right now, is a catbird or maybe several catbirds, but they love it. Oh my gosh. They spend so much time in there splashing about.
I love watching birds in bird baths. I think it's the sweetest thing.
I have literally two outside my window as well as the feeders. Of course, these days they don't need one because it's so rainy. Everywhere's a bird bath.
It looks like you have such a pretty yard.
It's kind of a hill, not really super pretty, but it does the trick. It's nice to look at. It's green. It's not,
Hmm.
happy. All right. There's nobody in the waiting room. There's usually people in the waiting room. I wonder if there a snafu in sending out the.
I don't think so. I got one.
Yeah.
Hopefully people come. I'm sure they will.
If not, we'll do it anyway, and maybe you can just make up questions.
Okay.
So we'll then do the recording.
Okay.
I'm gonna start it. Right. Hello, folks. Welcome. We're gonna give it a couple minutes and wait for folks to come in before we get started. It is raining cats and dogs here in Pittsburgh. I don't know what the weather's like where anyone else is, but it is just dreadful weather here right now, which is the rule, I think, for this spring. Has anyone else had a
Really.
particularly rainy uh, season? I don't know if it's just us or if it's been rainy everywhere. Welcome, folks. Give folks a minute to find their link. Drop your name and where you're from if you want in the chat. It's interesting. So we changed the date of this one from it's usually on a Thursday and we're doing it on a Tuesday today. And there were quite a few registrants, but a lot of folks not actually coming into the room. And I'm wondering if it's a bad time and day for people. I know a lot of people watch the recordings, but usually we get a good percentage of folks attending. Welcome, folks. If you want to drop your name and where you're from in the chat. We'll give it one more minute on this rainy Tuesday afternoon. Is anyone going to refed? Maybe everybody's pressed getting ready for travel. Hi, Grace. We are leaving for Washington for refed later this weekend. I hope that people will attend. We'd love to see you. We're actually going to have a table at refed, so if you're there, definitely come by and say hello. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Do you want to give me the next slide, Sedona? Just a few reminders, drop your questions in the Q&A, and we will answer them at the end if there's any questions. We are recording this. We will send this out to folks that weren't able to make it. I know we get a lot of watches in the after, so we'll be making sure to provide that. And then at the end of the webinar, we'll provide links to follow up or to register for the next webinar. So with that, this is the last in our series, the How to Start a Food Rescue. We're actually going to reprise it again, starting in July. We will have new guest speakers, though. We're going to do them fresh again. We're not going to just show the recording so people can ask questions, but we will be starting this again in July. We are going to skip the introductory session because we usually do not have a webinar the month of our conference in October. So we're just going to jump right into funding in July with the How to Start a Food Rescue. But today we're going to talk about volunteers, and volunteers includes your board members who, after all, are also volunteers, people who are doing rescues for you, as well as other organizational volunteers. So the thing about food rescue is we rely on we like to say it's a three-legged stool, right? We rely on volunteers, food donors, and distribution partners. And it's really important that you are paying attention to each of the legs of that stool. If you focus exclusively on one of them, or exclusively ignore one, you're going to end up with a lopsided stool that falls over. So it's really important to make sure that you have all of the pieces of your food recovery organization kind of growing and flourishing together at a similar pace. Anytime that gets out of whack, you're going to have somebody that's unhappy, whether it's your food donors, your volunteers, or your distribution partners. But when you're starting a food recovery organization, or really any nonprofit, this is true for any nonprofit, there are, and you're thinking about volunteers, you want to think really more strategically than you will. Well, I don't know if I'm going to take that back. I'm not going to say more strategically. I think you should always be thinking about where your gaps are and if and how you can use volunteers to fill that. I think early on, a lot of people will think about volunteers just as somebody that might be doing a food rescue, but there's a lot of ways that volunteers can fill in an early new organization, both in terms of serving on the board as well as in terms of building the organization. So thinking about, when on your board, having an accountant or an attorney, or HR is a really great professional to have on your board, because a lot of organizations think of HR as a nice to have, not a have to have, but having somebody that can help address issues as they arise and make sure that you're building a workplace that's good for employees as well as yourself is great to have from the get-go. Fundraisers, food donors, community representatives, et cetera. You want to make sure that you have or you want to see if you can get those folks to serve on your board, because those are really critical infrastructure building pieces. And having somebody that's committed to the organization as a board member that also brings that skill to the table will help make sure that your organization has access to the services and skills it needs, oftentimes pro bono. And that's the key there, because we all know when you're starting an organization, it's not like you have buckets of money being thrown at you to start it. You need to really prioritize where you're spending your money. And if you can get an accountant to donate their services for free as an in-kind donation, that's super helpful. Um, Along with those professional skills that you really need, and again, got to have an attorney if you can, an accountant, HR. You also want to make sure, especially for a founding board, that you look beyond the skill set. You want board members who are workers and doers. A founding board is a working board. A lot of professionals that have maybe served on some boards of more staid organizations might think of it as just a once a month meeting where they get a little bit of credit on their CV and on their LinkedIn profile that they're associated with this organization, and maybe they write them a check. A founding board has to show up. A founding board has to be there. They have to be tabling at your events. They have to be working to get you donors, fundraise, to get you a monetary donors, making those connections, finding you food donors, helping you get volunteers. You absolutely must have people that know that and are going to show up for you. And they need to be people you trust, because you don't want to fill your board with people that you don't know and have them suddenly decide that the organization needs to go in another direction. So make sure that that board is filled with people that you really trust and that are on the same page with you, and those that are committed, that are going to stick with you for a couple of years. You really don't want to have to be re-recruiting a board chair in the middle of your first year. You want to be filling in gaps instead of, treading water there. Um, Thinking strategically about your volunteers, regardless of what type of volunteer you're talking about, early on, is a smart organization building tactic, and you want to do it very strategically. So you want to think about what your needs are, how volunteers can help fill those gaps, and then have a plan. Don't just and listen. I'm not saying that we were perfect at the beginning. I've been part of a lot of startups, and sometimes it's willy-nilly grabbing who you can. It's getting bodies in the door. And that is certainly something that is going to happen. But when you can, if you can be smart, if you can be strategic, if you can think ahead, it's really, really helpful. Even if you have one person that you grab because you trust them, but they bring no skill, and then you can very carefully recruit an attorney that's a workhorse, that is committed, that you trust, that's really important. It's also, again, thinking about those gaps that you have, making those volunteers count in building up your initial sort of, startup toolkit. So looking at those specialized skills and letting folks know that you would take that as an in-kind donation. So they're not just volunteering out of the goodness of their heart, but that's a donation that they're making from their business. And that can help them, add to their bottom line as well as feel good about themselves. So, some really common in kind skills that have been donated to organizations that have been a part of are marketing. We talked about marketing in the last webinar. So, if you didn't see that, I suggest you go back and check it out. It was a really good webinar, but there's a lot of marketers around that get really excited and want to help build your org. Ask them to help you create some early marketing. Fundraising, create a fundraising committee. Get volunteers that maybe aren't right for the board, that or don't want to be on the board, but get them on that fundraising committee so that they can help you get those early startup dollars. And that if you are lucky enough to hire somebody, or if you're doing the fundraising yourself, it's not all on the shoulders of that one person or of that founder. You've got a team that's there to help you. Web design and maintenance. I could throw together a webinar, or I'm sorry, a webinar. I could throw together a website. Sure, I could, muddle my way through it, but websites need maintenance, right? They need upkeep. They need to be updated. You need to have dynamic content on there. And the, 10 hours it might take me to muddle my way through figuring out how to put together a WordPress site when I could get somebody who does this for a living to do it in two, there's better places for me to spend my time. And if you can get somebody to give you that initial design and then to commit to coming in and doing an update, once a month, once every other month, so that you have that dynamic content, that is going to save you a ton of money and make your organization look so professional and polished. And then graphic design. Again, lots of graphic designers out there, a lot of graphic design students. If you've got a university nearby that are looking to build their portfolio, you can find a lot of folks out there that are willing to donate their services. Again, this is an in-kind donation. Give them a receipt. Ask them for evaluation. Give them a receipt. They've now have made a donation, and you can count that when you're talking to other funders. You have donations equal to the value of the marketing, the fundraising, the web design, the graphic design that has been given to you. So really think again about how you're leveraging all of those pieces. And as I said a minute ago, and I want to go back and touch on that, this gives your organization a really professional look too. If you can get somebody who does this for a living, who's really skilled at this to come in and give you just a little bit of their time, you end up looking more polished. And that is going to help you recruit more volunteers. It's going to help you recruit food donors and nonprofit partners. And probably most importantly, at this early stage, it's going to help you with financial donors because you're going to look put together. People don't necessarily want to invest in something that's not proven, but if you can show them that you've got your act together, that you've got this professional package, they're going to be more likely to think of you as somebody that has a promise of success. And then with that, I do want to offer a cautionary tale. Actually, go back one slide, Sedona. I'm sorry. There's a little asterisk that says make sure your logo is what you want for the long haul. Go ahead. That's true in two ways. First of all, don't put together a logo and think this is good enough for now, right? You're building a brand identity. People are going to associate that with you. You don't want to have to switch out your logo in 6 months or a year because you had a placeholder. That's the first thing. The second thing is don't let somebody design a logo for you and then feel you have to use it if you don't like it and it doesn't resonate with you. This is your organization. Make sure you and the stakeholders of the organization want the product that somebody is giving you. Just because they've done it for free does not mean you are required to take it if that is going to undermine your organization. So if somebody designs a website for you and it's garbage, you don't have to use it. If you don't like the logo, you don't have to use it. It's okay to offer feedback, to ask for changes, or to say no, thank you. And I think that's really important to remember, especially as startups, we're so inclined to just take what people will offer us and feel obligated to use it because we're begging, right? But when it comes to those really critical pieces of your organization, don't make the mistake of kind of putting yourself in a position where you're using something as your brand that you're not happy with. And the same goes for programs or partnerships too, even the funded ones. And this is important to remember too. I think we've all done this or been part of organizations that have done this where somebody's come to you with funding, you've really needed funding, and so you've said okay, but the programming isn't what you had in mind. It's not what you're already doing. It's kind of mission creep. It maybe is adjacent but not exactly. If you're putting your time resources and other resources towards that, you're not building the program you want to build. So, you know, if somebody is proposing to you that partnership or program, funded or not funded, make sure that it's what you want to do. You don't have to take everything that's offered to you. So, great. Great ideas. Love it. Let's get lots of volunteers. I need somebody to design a logo. How do you do that? Well, it starts with marketing, right? Marketing, marketing, marketing. You have to make sure that people know your organization exists and that when they hear about you and they go to look into you, there's something there. The original, initial sort of social media, for example, presence, for example, that can have not a logo, but just like a name graphic, right? Because a name graphic is not a design identity, and you can easily swap out if it said, Food Rescue Hero or Pittsburgh Food Recovery or something like that. You can easily swap that out with an image, but make sure you have something for people to look at and then market. Have that social media set up early. Take a picture of yourself doing a rescue. Take whatever content you can get and get that up there. Again, another pitch, last month's webinar, it's on our website. We go through a lot of marketing must-haves that you can do on a budget. Earned media is gold. It's a gold mine. This is an earned media means getting somebody to do a news article about you. So it's kind of contrasting from media that you would pay for. So this is thinking about traditional TV news, newspaper, local radio shows, online magazines, offline magazines, getting those news stories. Even though we think of you know, new like TV news, for example, as being a little bit passe and out of date, their content is still how people find out what's going on in their area. It just might be that they're posting their stories onto social media as well as broadcasting them. Those news stories are gold. They get so many people to hear about your mission and get engaged. We always see a spike in our app downloads after a news story. And even before we had our app, when there would be a news story, we would get people pouring onto our social media. How can I help you? And hone your message, what you're doing, why it's important, what the needs are, and then fake it till you make it. And this is something I cannot overemphasize. When somebody starts a business, you never see them say, "Hey, I think I'm going to try maybe selling stuff at this store," right? They say, "We're a store, we're open for business, we're doing this," even before they've sold a single thing, right? If you're starting a food recovery organization, even if you've only done 3 food rescues and you're committed and you're going to see it through, you are a food recovery organization. Don't talk about it like something that might happen. Talk about it like something you're doing. People will get excited and join you and make it happen. But again, you've got to have that sort of that confidence that this is a thing that's happening. And I've seen a lot of folks, especially starting a nonprofit, get a little bit apologetic about the fact that they have only done a few rescues or that they're not 5 years old. Just think of how a business starts, right? They exist, they're a business, they're fully fledged business even before they sell a single thing. So make sure as you communicate in your marketing that you are showing that same confidence and commitment, and that will get you people that are excited to participate in your mission. And then look for volunteer recruitment hotspots. And this is true for all kinds of volunteers, whether you're talking, again, board, special skill sets, or just regular food rescue partners. That's not the word I'm looking for. What's the word I'm looking for? Food rescuers. There we go. Sometimes words are hard. I am like so focused on getting to refed later this week. I think my brain is going 12 directions right now. There are lots of places to find volunteers online. So there is a website called Board Match, and there's a bunch of ones like that where you can go in and you can find people who are interested in being on boards of directors. And you can post for people that are interested. And you can say, just in my area, you can look nationally, whatever it is you're looking for. And the same is true for Volunteer Match. And again, that's really great for those special skill sets. If you need a graphic designer, um, I've been working on starting the National Food Recovery Association recently, which I think some folks know about on here. We used Volunteer Match to find somebody to do our website and to do our graphic design. So those are great places to find some of those special skills for project related things. And then Idealist is not just for paid staff. Idealist also has a board member category, and that is a great place to list your organization. A lot of, I know I look at that, or in the past, I'm not looking at that now, but in the past, when I've been looking to see what jobs were out there, and I was interested in the nonprofit world, that's where I went. And that is where also I found some board opportunities. Then, of course, post on your socials as well. But those are great places to find particular skill sets and people that are looking to volunteer. Then locally, when you're looking in person, their clubs and churches are great. It's like a volunteer buffet, and they are always looking for content for their meetings. So the social clubs like Lions, Elks, Rotary, those sorts of clubs, Moose, whatever it is you have in your area, they all have a commitment to service. They're all interested in community projects. We've spoken at millions of them. And they will then show up and volunteer as well as donate money. We have gotten both financial and long-term volunteers from speaking engagements at those sorts of organizations. And then church bulletins as well. A lot of churches have educational series, whether it's, they do something after their service on Saturday or Sunday, or some of them have things during the week. I've certainly spoken in a number of those and get volunteers who are there looking to learn about what's happening in their community. So that's a really fertile pool, especially when you're short, when you have limited bandwidth. If you're an organization of just a few people, those are great places to make sure that you're really focusing your efforts where they're going to bear fruit. And then recruit thoughtfully. Um, Recruiting volunteers that you can't use will burn bridges. If you say, if you put something out for a graphic design and you tell five of them you want to work with them, but then only ever work with one, those four are going to be left with a bad taste in their mouth. If you get five and you can ask to see their portfolios and then tell the one that you want to work with that you choose them and everybody else let them down gently. Thank you so much. We've found somebody. We really appreciate it. Here's another way to get involved. One thing that we have seen, especially with recruiting volunteers to do food rescues, is if you have a news story or you put out a call for volunteers and you have one rescue a day and you get 100 people wanting to volunteer, you're going to burn those bridges. There's not going to be enough rescues for people to do. They're going to be frustrated. So you have to only ask for what you need. If you don't need volunteers to do rescues, then think about another ask for those folks to support you financially, to share your mission online, to let you know if there are food donors in their areas that you think would be a good fit, or introduce them to nonprofits. Think of other ways to get those people engaged and keep them engaged so you're not losing them without uh, telling them you're going to have them do a food rescue and then have nothing for them to do. And so, that's what the PR is great, but only ask for what you need. Um, Similarly, if you're speaking in an area that you're not active in, or if you've just started and you're not really ready for volunteers at this moment, tailor your story and tailor your ask. We are ramping up to do rescues. We only need a few right now. We're in our pilot stage, but we anticipate that to grow. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to our newsletter, and keep your eye out because we will need volunteers in the coming months, right? That's your ask, not volunteer now, because you're not going to have anything for them to do. Can you tell that I have done this? I have I have made this mistake. I've heard the complaints from people. Specifically, I'm traumatized by this. The South Hills of Pittsburgh, they were super excited to volunteer. We didn't have anything there, and they were salty. They were like, "I signed up, but there's no rescues here." Right? We promised them something we couldn't deliver, and it was a bad experience for them. So you want to be real careful about that. If you can create group options, do that as early as you can. You might need to be creative about what this looks like. One thing that we've done is we've worked with groups where they do a personal care drive and they themselves are getting the materials. They're buying them, they're having those donated, and then we have them come in and put together personal care bags that we can then deliver to somebody. That will allow you to use more volunteers than you need for your rescues and gives you some overflow for those excited parties. Because again, the worst thing is to get somebody really excited and really wanting to participate in your organization and in your mission and then not having anything for them to do, right? They will lose interest. So you want to keep them engaged, and group options are a great way to do that. If you go back to our funding webinar that we did last week, we also talked about the fact that group volunteers can be fundraising opportunities. So again, if you can build those in early on, those are opportunities not just to keep volunteers engaged, but to fundraise. Which brings us to the last point, which is always be fundraising. All of those volunteer opportunities, all of those people that are interested in participating, all of those people that are excited about your mission, you know, make sure that there's an easy way for them to donate money. Make sure there's an easy way for them to invest financially and capture their information. And this is absolutely key. Get those emails, get that information, get those people to like your social medias because that becomes your fundraising pool as well as your volunteer pool. So you want to be always thinking about making sure that you're building those lists of people to help you catapult yourself to success. And that's what they're there for, right? If they're engaged, if they're listening to your pitch and they're like, this is a great idea, I want to participate, that's what they're there for. They want to be asked, they want to do. So make sure you're getting that info so that you can ask them when you have things you need. Next. And then you want to keep those volunteers. And that's about more than just having a having something for them to do. It's about keeping them engaged. It's about saying thank you early and often. We feature volunteers a lot in our social media, and I've looked at a lot of social media of other organizations, and they're doing the same, and that is best practice. You want to be calling out your volunteers that are doing the good work. One of the nice things we have that we started is volunteers asking them to tag us on social media and take a food rescue selfie. And our volunteers now do this all the time. It's become a thing that happens. And this is probably true in other places because selfies are their own sort of thing, right? But our volunteers, even before we had an app where they could take that selfie, were taking selfies and posting on social media that we were using. That gave us the opportunity to repost, to say thank you, to tell them they were heroes, to tell them about the impact they were making, to tell everybody else about the impact they were making. And it really helps build that loyalty to the organization and the cause and helps them feel good about what they're doing because they are doing something great. So thank them early and often. Note milestones. This is one of my favorite stories, which I don't think you can read here, but this fellow, and I can't remember his name, but Eric, he did food rescues on the bus. That is him sitting on a bus. He did not have a car. He wanted to participate in the mission. He did food rescues by bus. And we've had some folks who walked their food rescues. And so, here we are calling out the number of times he's done a food rescue on a bus. Note when somebody's done, 5 rescues this month, or hits their 100th rescue, or has rescued 1,000 pounds, or whatever it is. Make it up and celebrate their accomplishments. Feature them on your social media and your website and in your PR. This is also a great way to collect those stories. Going back to our conversation last month about media and marketing, this is a great way to capture that information, those stories that you can leverage for getting more volunteers because people can say, "Oh my gosh, if Eric can do a food rescue on a bus, I sure can find the time to do one, or I can do one as well." So they become your best recruiters. And in that process, make room for hearing their concerns or their complaints. Make sure that you have a way for them to vent to you privately, not on your social media, about when things go wrong. You know what volunteers hate? They hate to show up and have there be no donation at an donor, right? And they're going to want to tell you about it. They hate that. So give them a place to do that that isn't necessarily on your social media. Hear them and respond to those concerns. So they don't become a burnt out volunteer. Instead, they become a partner in helping you make your operations better. So like in that case, we would take that information and go talk to the donor and maybe think about tweaking the schedule for that donor. And in that way, their bad experience or their concern or their discomfort becomes part of making the organization better, and they become a partner in that, which can turn a bad experience into a good one. And I think that is the end of that. Yep, that's the end. So I would be happy to answer any questions or talk about anything else that you want to talk about. I don't see any questions in the Q&A yet. Does anyone have any questions about either volunteers doing food rescues or recruiting for your board of directors or gifts in kind to volunteers? One thing I'll say, and again, this comes back from our earned income uh, webinar we did last week. That was last week. Oof. Is that eventually group volunteers become an opportunity for fundraising, and your individual volunteers also become potentially financial donors. So having that happy volunteer pool is really critical in more than one way. All right. While we're waiting for questions, if nobody has a question, if you haven't dropped your name and where you're from in the chat, feel free to do that. Or let us know if you're going to Refed, and we can look forward to seeing you at Refed next week. We're very excited about that. It's a quiet group today. Next month, our webinar is Navigating New Federal Realities, uh, specifically talking about advocacy. This month, we talked about the funding implications for the disappearance of a lot of grants. Next month, we're going to talk about advocacy and how you can create an advocacy program, especially given the current situation. We are going to have somebody from Zero Food Waste Coalition join us, and we're going to also talk about state and local opportunities for advocacy. Hi, Omar. Nice to see you here. We look forward to meeting or seeing Lauren at Refed this month, next week. Lordy, help me. All right. Oh, and one other pitch for our conference. We would love to have anybody submit a proposal for our food rescue conference, as well as to join us as a participant, as a viewer. The conference website and registration is open right now, and you can find that. We'll drop the link into the chat. Randy has a question: how to handle problem volunteers? That's a really great question, Randy. And it's one that you hope to avoid, but it happens. You know, we've had volunteers who've, for whatever reason, screamed at a donor because they didn't have something, or volunteers who yelled at our staff. And I think it's critical to, number one, go in with your listening ears and hear what it is that's upsetting them. If they're a problem, it's probably because they're upset because something has thrown them off kilter, has threatened them, has made them feel unhappy or uncomfortable. So go in and find out what that is. A lot of times you can turn around a problem volunteer. That goal is to keep that volunteer, to turn them around and help them be a non-problem, happy volunteer. Sometimes it's just a matter of hearing their frustrations and concerns and talking through them. It's letting them know, as I talked about earlier, that their concerns are valid and we're going to take those and use them to help make the experience better for everybody, as well as to help make our operations better. Um, and then sometimes you actually have to fire a volunteer. And that has happened. And I would say don't be afraid to let a volunteer go if they are um, disrupting the rest of the participants in your program. We had somebody who, like I said, who yelled at a food donor, like screamed at them, and they were the food donor was very upset. And we talked to this person and they would not back down, and we had to let them go. We did not want somebody, and there was no reason. It wasn't like the food donor was rude to them or did anything. They just didn't have what they expected to have. And we've actually also had a volunteer, let a volunteer go who is verbally abusive to our staff. It's okay to do that. You need to protect the people who are operating in good faith and who are, doing their best out of the goodness of their heart to make your organization work and to make food recovery a success. Randy said, I found that they may not be a people person, but may be great behind the scenes. And absolutely, if you can get somebody that is um, that's a problem because they're not great with the folks to volunteer in a different way. And that comes from that going in with listening ears and talking to them and finding out what's going on and seeing if you can involve them in other ways. And we never end up, firing a volunteer at first sign of a problem. There's always a process that happens and talking through and trying to find out what's going on. Because don't forget, our volunteers are people too. Maybe their dog just died, or maybe they just had like something really awful happen in their life or in their day, and you need to go in and find that out. And it's still not okay for them to yell at people, but going in and seeing what you can do to mitigate that circumstance and bring them around and not lose them from the organization. But again, I stand by if somebody will not back down and is going to be abusive to anybody that's in that circle or on that stool, your staff, your other volunteers, your food donors, or your nonprofit partners, and they're not going to back away from that, then that's not a volunteer you need. How do you prevent poverty porn and privacy issues with beneficiaries being seen in documentary photos or videos? That's a great question. We encourage our volunteers to only take a picture with anybody who's willing, to always get consent for taking a photo. Nobody, nobody, not a volunteer, not a food donor, not a nonprofit partner or an end recipient, not a staff member should be volunteered without their consent. And that's really key. And we really make that clear. When we do, as a staff, take photos or videos with nonprofit partners, it's again always with their consent, with understanding what the video is going to be about and how we're going to use it. I really strongly urge folks to avoid, as you put it, poverty porn. So you don't go in and show people in pathetic situations, right? They have a lot of agency, and they should not be displayed as props, right, for your purposes. What we've found, and this is something that I'm really uh, uh, makes me really happy, is that a lot of our distribution partners are excited about their participation in our program and want to help promote it. So, as an example, we work with a lot of housing authorities. And within those housing authorities, it is the residents who are the volunteers. They receive our truck or they meet the volunteer at the door that's bringing it, and then they're the ones that sort through the food, make sure it gets into a format that it can be distributed and help get it to other residents. Those folks love the program, and they, even though they also are receiving food, consider themselves volunteers, as do we, and are really excited to talk about it. And so it's finding the folks like that and demonstrating the agency of the people involved and making sure that they are, willing participants. And I'm sure there's, lots of other ways in which people who are end users, recipients, work at the agencies that are distributing can be part of the story without being, um, I'm struggling with words today. What's the word I'm looking for? Taken advantage of, being objects of the story instead of subjects of the story. We don't want to objectify them in a negative way. And then the other way, Angeli, is that uh, so because of our app, our volunteers take a photo and it comes into our back end and we can pick and choose what we want to use. Now, we can't stop them from posting, though, again, we really advocate that they're getting consent from folks to post the picture. But we look at photos that come in and it's almost exclusively just the volunteer being excited about the food rescue, but we're not going to take something that is questionable and use it. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. The other piece I would add is that if you, again, you think about that three-legged stool, right? You've got your food donors, you've got your volunteers, and then you've got your distribution partners. And a lot of our distribution partners are staffed by people who are receiving the food. And they are critical pieces of making food recovery work. We very specifically chose the language of nonprofit partner as opposed to recipient. We do not use the word recipient. And I think that that is an important distinction because, again, it is not thinking about the people who are receiving the food. I use the word receiving. It's hard, it's linguistically challenging, right? We're not thinking about the folks that are the end users of that food as, you know, as charity cases. We're thinking of them as partners in making sure that food does not get sent to the landfill. I hope that answered your question. What's the best way to talk to volunteers about also donating monetarily while recognizing their current contributions? That's a great question. We work a lot on that language. And I'll tell you an example. During one of our critical needs, day of giving recently, we split up the list and called volunteers. And I called some volunteers that I knew personally. And one of them has been volunteering with us for 10 years. She does a ton of stuff. And I know her out in the community as well. She does a lot of work out there. And she said, respectfully, my donation is my time. And I said, absolutely, that is 100% legitimate. We appreciate your time, and that is a great donation. We're just looking to see who has the, ability to potentially make a monetary donation. And I think it's really important that you recognize the critical nature of all contributions to the organization, whether they are financial or an investment in time, or a skill set. So part of that goes back to always thanking your volunteers and letting them know how important they are. At the same time, what we think about is that when you ask somebody for a monetary contribution, you're giving them an opportunity to be to help you be more impactful, to be more impactful, to make a bigger impact. Donating money is another way to make impact. So if you don't ask them or give them that opportunity, they cannot do that. But if you ask them, then maybe they want to do it. Just again, it's how you frame the different types of contribution and making sure that they're all being recognized as valid. I'm super rambly today, so I hope that made some sense. Our VP of advancement, Danielle, is really good at this. And actually, I think we did a webinar with her earlier in the year, and she is great to listen to because she really understands and believes to her core that giving people an opportunity to donate money is giving them an opportunity to make a difference in the world. And if you think about it like that, it's just the same thing as asking them to volunteer their time. Some people don't have time, but they have money. And some people don't have money, but they have time. The other thing I want to add about that too is something that I did not think of until our volunteer manager was at a conference and pointed out that we oftentimes celebrate our super volunteers. And they're great. They're so great. Oh my gosh, we have volunteers that have been doing a rescue every week for 10 years. We have some that have done, we have one volunteer that's literally rescued over 100,000 pounds by himself. But they are privileged. They have the time, they have the vehicle, they have the gas money, they have the resources, they're in a comfortable position, they're able to give that. And that volunteer contribution should not overshadow the person who is maybe a single parent and works full time or has two jobs and is still managing to do, a couple rescues a year. So I think that's also really important is just valuing everything that our volunteers contribute and recognizing that, they're giving what they're able to give, and not overshadowing the folks who maybe are honestly giving proportionally more than the super volunteer, but it's just not visible. And so, again, those milestones are fun and important to celebrate, but also the one-offs, the person who only does a few rescues, just making sure that we're thanking all of our volunteers equally. All right. Are there any other questions? Those are great questions, everybody. Thank you. All right. Well, I thank everybody for participating today. We will be sending out this webinar. I urge you to register for the conference, to check out our upcoming webinars. If you're going to be at ReFed, to say hello to us. We look forward to seeing you all at one of those events coming up. Oh, wait, here in the Philippines, here's one more question. We don't have food banks yet in the Philippines. What would be a nice alternative to them? So I'm actually going to say that food recovery is really a different model than a food bank. A food recovery, and you don't need a food bank with food recovery, right? It is not, instead of that sort of hub and spoke model, it is more the localized solutions. So you're rescuing food and you're taking it directly to organizations that are serving people in the community. So your housing, your low-income housing sites, your low-income childcare centers, veterans programs, literacy centers, job training programs, after-school programs, anything like that. And I think that's a really great great alternative to a food bank, and it does not take the same capital investment that a food bank takes either. That is something that you can pull together with very little resources, again, using volunteers. If you are able to mobilize volunteers to pick up food in that highly distributed network. So at the, they go to a grocery store, they pick up the donation and they take it to wherever it's going to be distributed to people. Let's say a veterans program or a literacy training center, right? That does not take the same sort of like overhead of having a central warehouse or trucks or anything like that. It's a very economic solution to both food waste as well as food insecurity. So I think that if you have a place that does not have that sort of infrastructure yet, food recovery is a really great model to bring in. Great. Any more questions? Every time I say, okay, well, we're done now, somebody has another question. So I don't want to cut anybody off. I'll give it a second. Think about it. Wonderful. I again feel like between the weird unseasonal weather and the fact that we're getting ready for refed, I'm so out of place and time today. Maybe everybody else is like that as well. So I'm going to close it out there unless somebody slips in another question in the meantime. Thanks, everybody. It was great to see you all the familiar faces and the new ones too. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.